A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America in Washington. This is Gibbs Dube in Maryland, and this is LiveTalk.
And I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya, who are broadcasting from my home in Washington, D.C. because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Health in Zimbabwe, releasing figures from yesterday, says that there are 37,751 confirmed cases since March last year, including 35,019 recoveries, and the unfortunate news is there are 1,553 deaths. And to date, a total of 278,583 people have been vaccinated against COVID-19.
Yes, Marvelous. Apart from COVID-19, we're going to look at the situation in Mozambique. We know that there's a Zimbabwean who has been killed in Mozambique, in that country where there's an ISIS insurgency. And then we're also going to touch on the post-independence celebrations. There are so many people who are still talking about independence. So back to COVID-19, we see that yesterday, according to the Minister of Health, there were 2 deaths and 52 new COVID cases. And out of all these people that have been infected, 1,552 have succumbed to COVID-19 in Zimbabwe. And we know that there are over 35,000 recoveries. And worldwide, according to Johns Hopkins University, almost 142 million people have contracted COVID-19, and 3 million and above have actually died. So now when we look at these figures, Marvelous, it seems as if in Zimbabwe, of course, there is a vaccination program like in all other countries. So in Zimbabwe, there are a couple of vaccines that are being used. And now we see that in USA, Johnson & Johnson has actually stopped, or let me say the government of America has actually paused the use of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They're saying that it is related to blood clots. So there's an issue there. So according to Johnson & Johnson, you know, they are saying all the vaccines have got some side effects, and they're citing blood clots. But according to Pfizer and Moderna, they're saying no, they don't have that problem. So okay, Zuranda bage, namhlanje siyahlangana ku LiveTalk. Besixoxa ke ngikhonapha nge-COVID-19, sawazi ukuthi i-COVID-19 ihlasela okunye okumangalisayo. Saphinda futhi sixoxe ngakhona okwenzakala elizweni leMozambique, lapho kulabantu ababulawa khona yi-ISIS. Sakwazi ukuthi kulomuntu odabuka eZimbabwe ukhanya ngazani waqunywa khona ngale ngamalecathala anganye ayenza okunye okwethusayo. So nxa sikhangela ke siya phambili, sakhangela futhi ngokuthi abantu kade benanza uzibuse, kambe uzibuse utshoni ebantwini abaningi. So ke nxa sikhangela i-COVID-19 kulabantu ababili ababulewe umkhuhlane lo izolo, kwathi abayi-52 batholakala belo mkhuhlane lo. So singathi okwamanje sokulabantu abadlula 37,000 asebahlolwa batholakala bele COVID-19, kwaphepha kumkhuhlane lo abedlula 35,000. So kwabhubha abantu 1,552. Nxa sikhangela ke ama-Jackson, sakwazi ukuthi abantu bayajovwa, asebejovwe ukuqala bayi-278,583, kusukusithi asebejovwe okwesibili sebefika phose 36,000. So ke kukhanya kuyaqhubekela phambili khona ngale kweleZimbabwe. Kuzobuya ke i-Johns Hopkins University ithi kulabantu 142 million asebanjwe umkhuhlane we-COVID-19, kwabhubha abedlula 3 million. So kunzima kakhulu lokhu, Marvelous.
Kune avo vachangobva kupinda muchirongwa chedu nemusi wemuvhuro April 19, tinokuchingamidzai nemufaro. Nhasi tichange tiri kutarisa isu pamusoro pedenda rechirwere cheCovid-19 icho chatekeshera pasi rose tichitsanganisirawo munyika yeZimbabwe, umo tinonzwa kubva kubazi rezveutano rinotaura iro kuti kubvira nezuro pane vanhu vanosvika ivo 37,751 vakawanikwa vachibatwa nedenda iri kubva denda iri ratanga gore rapfuura. Totarisa zvakare kuti kune nhau dzakanaka dzekuti pane vanhu 35,019 vakabatwa neCovid-19 vakakunda chirwere ichi. Tozotarisazve kuti aiwa kune vamwewo vakashaya kubva kuchirwere ichi vasvika pa 1,553. tombotarisa zvakare nyaya yenhomba yecovid-19. Tinoona kuti Zimbabwe pari zvino iri muphase 2 yenhomba iyi, uyezve Zimbabwe iri kuti iyo yakwanisa iyo kubaya nhomba vanhu vanosvika ivo 278,583 pari zvino. Tichitarisawo pasi rose kuti denda iri recovid-19 richiri rakasunga. Imo muno muAmerica mune vanhu 500,000 nekudaudzira vawanikwa vachishaya kubva kuchirwere ichi. Uyezve pane nhaurwa yejekiseni kana kuti nhomba reJohnson & Johnson rakambomiswa kuti ribayiwe vanhu imo muno muAmerica, vachiti ivo vachada kumboriongorora kuti vaone kuti harizokwanisa kunge richishatisira vanhu here munguva inotevera. Saka ndo zvimwe zvatichange tiri kukurukura tichitarisa zvakare zviri kuitika munyika yeMozambique, umo tinoonzwa kuti pane munhu mumwe chete wokuZimbabwe akawanikwa achishaya pahondo iri kuitika imomo nevanopfurikidza mwero vari kuCabo Delgado kune rimwe guta. Asi tiona zvakare kuti vakuru vemunyika yeSADC vachisanganisira Zimbabwe vakawanikwa vachienda kunoita musangano mukuru muMaputo mumavhiki apfuura, vakawanikwa ivo vachiwirirana kuti vatumire mauto kunyika iyo yeMozambique. Saka tichange tiri kutarisa zviri kuitika ikoko, tichitarisa zvakare kuti nhasi muZimbabwe tichitarisa kuti independence yanga iriko nezuro, asi nhasi vanhu vari pazororo reindependence. Kuti independence iyi kana kuzvitonga kuzere kunorevei? Saka tichange tiine nyanzvi tichikurukura tichiona kuti zvakamira sei pari zvino. Gibbs.
Yes, Marvelous. Talking about the situation in Mozambique, according to Reuters news agency, 12 people, possibly foreigners, were found beheaded following an attack by Islamic State on the northern Mozambique town of Palma recently. So Reuters is actually quoting Commander Pedro da Silva, who actually told journalists that there are some foreigners who are believed to be white and some are black. So we know that there is a Zimbabwean believed to have been, decapitated in Mozambique. And then regional leaders from countries including South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana met in Mozambique recently to consider a response to the insurgency. All what they could say is that they're going to deploy a technical team in that country. And so now, to get an update of what is going on in Mozambique, I actually talked to a journalist who is in Mozambique. His name is Manuel Micaro. So let's listen to what he's saying about the situation in that country.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm Manuel Mucar, and I'm a journalist from Mozambique. I work for the biggest daily newspaper in Mozambique, Notícias. I cover a whole host of issues, economics, politics, and humanitarian things. And probably you know that we're having a very, very stressful times now because of these humanitarian issues in Cabo Delgado and northern Mozambique.
Yes, so brief us about the situation in northern Mozambique. What is going on there?
Basically, it's a struggle that we really don't know the origins of that struggle there, that fight and that combat. What we know is that since 2017, we've seen attacks in northern Mozambique, especially in northernmost districts of Cabo Delgado, which are closer to the gas projects that are being prepared to help us go out of this poverty that the country is suffering. And probably we see that there is an economic link between the insurgency and these projects, because they are basically from Western sources. So we know that the jihadists, extremists, they all fight everything that is Western. But there is another reason that we think is helped breed this anger towards those projects, towards Cabo Delgado, is that Cabo Delgado has been neglected by the government throughout the years. There's little investment there, and you can see that education is very low, and infrastructure is very poor. People there, they fend for themselves by growing foodstuff but there's no connection between the farms and the centers, business centers, where they can sell their produce and get some money. And the government hasn't done a lot to improve these conditions there. The government hasn't done a lot to invest in schools, invest in technical training for the youth there. So there's a lot of discontentment within the youth that they have been left behind. We see today huge investments in Cabo Delgado by those multinationals pouring in money to build their logistical base for the LNG gas that's going to be pumped from the Rovuma River. But you will see that from the thousands of jobs they created, a very, very tiny part of those jobs were given to local people. So probably that's been hanging people there, and that created the situation that people allowed in those extremists who came a little before 2017 when they started bombing the village, killing people with machetes. A little before that, they came in preaching I would say the Quran, preaching the Quran, but it was a radical version of the Quran. So the government was warned beforehand by the Muslim clergy there, Muslim imams, that there are some guys who are here trying to instill hate speech using Quran. So we depart from ourselves from that current of people. They want the government, but the government didn't take it very, very strongly. They dismissed it, said it's just a band of youth, it's nothing. But today we see that it's a much more serious.
So we see that many nationals, or let me say many people drawn from different countries, including Zimbabwe, are caught up in that situation. So what is happening in terms of foreigners that are caught up there, including Zimbabweans?
That's the interesting part of it. And the conflict, I'll call it the conflict, started in 2017, but it targeted mostly local people. The attack on 24th of March, it was an attack to the core or to the core of the gas business, Palma. Total is building a very, very huge logistic base to transform gas and then export it. So there is a lot of investment going on. There's a lot of foreign companies working with Total there. That's why you find Zimbabweans, you find South Africans, you find British. And part of these people were murdered by these Islamists on 24th of March. We've had the story of 12 people who have been beheaded at the Marula Hotel. They were foreigners who sought refuge at the hotel because it was the only secure place that they could go. But once there, they found out that the means to rescue them were very little. Some tried to break away from the siege on a convoy of 17 cars, but 7 cars were torched and 7 people were killed trying to flee the scene there. And most of those who were killed were foreigners. That's why your question is, why Zimbabweans are there? They are working for the companies building this logistical base.
And SADC is attempting to actually quell the situation there. What do you think SADC can do, in Mozambique?
I remember a very, very, very good word that you once told me, I think 20 years ago. SADC is a toothless organization. We saw they called the double Troika meeting in Maputo just 2 weeks ago, and they made no bold decision there. The only thing they said at the end of the some hours meeting. We are going to send a fact-checking mission to Mozambique to assess the needs of the government. What do the army need to fight the insurgents? But that shouldn't be the stance of SADC. SADC should be a little bit broader than that. They should say, let's send in very armored army, SADC army. Because I know that there is a tactical force that has been prepared for conflict zones. They should be using that tactical force now, but they are not doing that. They are delaying. They are delaying the intervention. They are delaying, but the things are happening on the ground. People are being murdered. Investment is being stopped. The country in the northern part of Mozambique is literally in a paralysis now.
So now, what do you think is going to happen in the long term? Concerning SADC and the situation in the northern region.
The northern region, in the long term, if the government doesn't take a very, very strong position, doesn't invest in the army, doesn't send the army there, the situation will be worse than this. Cabo Delgado will end up falling in the hands of these terrorists. That's what they want. They want to create a caliphate in Cabo Delgado. Why they want to create a caliphate in Cabo Delgado? Cabo Delgado is a very rich province, but under explored. It's very rich. It has gas, it has gold, it has rubies, it has a lot of minerals there, underexploited. So they want to exploit these resources, but you see, they will use that money to buy weapons to continue to control that area. Cabo Delgado has a very, very large area of the ocean where you can have international traffic of drugs, arms. That's what they want. They want a safe haven to do everything they want to have money. Someone, I don't know who's leading them, but someone is behind them, of course.
And why is it so difficult for the Mozambican army to actually defeat the militants?
The very first thing is that Mozambique disinvested a lot in the army during the past 20 years. There was no investment in the army. The only thing the government did in the army or the police, they invested more in the means to suppress dissident, citizen freedoms. That's what they did. They didn't arm the army towards fighting external aggression like this one. We were never prepared to this. That's why when it started in 2017, the government said, no, it's a fighting between religious people there or youth, discontented youth. It's nothing. They didn't do anything to quell the insurgents then. Now it's difficult because these guys, they control the bushes there. They know because they use the local youth. They know the bushes. I was talking to a military guy the other day, and then he told me, I asked him this question. You were in Palma, you were fighting these guys. You chased them out from there. Why did you go inside the bush to try and get them there? He said, no, we couldn't go there because we don't know the bush. They know the bush better than us. If we will go there, they will slaughter us in large numbers. And we know that the army lost dozens of people there, but they don't tell us how many they lost. Today, I was seeing a report from the military spokesperson there who said that they killed at least 41 insurgents. They are found with some mass graves there where there are people buried there. So they found some insurgents buried with their weapons, and they counted them 41 people. But they are not telling us how many civilians were killed, how many Zimbabweans were killed there. I know for a fact that there's one Zimbabwean who was beheaded there at Amarula Hotel, but probably there are more because some of Zimbabweans, they managed to get Mozambican IDs, fake IDs. They have IDs So you can't say if he's a Zimbabwean or not, because they even speak the same language, this Bantu language, they related to each other. So it's difficult to know who is who. And that's why the insurgency found a very fertile ground for them to grow, to implement their radical agenda here. That's why they found, because our languages are the same, the people are the same. You can't say that this guy is a terrorist, this guy is from Congo, this guy is from Tanzania, because we look like the same and we speak this very same languages. It's difficult to have a sieve where you can say you pass, you don't pass, because we are the same people now.
Yes, marvelous. So that is Manuel Mukari of Mozambique. He works for one of the biggest newspapers in that country. And wekhuluma lapha ke isithi ke ukwenzakala eMozambique kuyethusa marvelous ngoba uthi ke ibutho liyesaba lokulandela amalecathala egangeni ngenxa yokuthi amalecathala ayalazi iganga kodwa akutsho kakhulu ukuthi ke kanyangazani abantu abavuse konke lokhu ngabantu abakhonona nge-investment eCabo Delgado ukuthi ama-youth sikhuluma ke ngala msebenzi abanye vele bahlezi nzima so kuzobuya lokuthi-ke nxa sebekhangele abantu bokuza yiba sebenika umsebenzi abaningi ama-outsiders yiba sebethola imisebenzi yiba sebesemba igas njenge i-total nxa sebeqhatsha abantu bazuza abantu from Zimbabwe, South Africa, Angola, Congo, but ama-locals are not getting what they're supposed to get. That's why he's saying ukuthi lokhu kwenze ukuthi amalecathala angene khonapha so uphinde wakhuluma njalo lokuthi ama-foreigners maningi kakhulu endaweni leyo eCabo Delgado lakhona ngale Pama lapho-ke abantu ababulawa khona ukuthi lakho kunzima bese kubuya iSADC ukuthi iSADC kungani ithwele imadolo nzima ngenxa yokuthi abafuni ukuthi befake ibutho kule Mozambique babe lokhu bebhodabhoda so ukuthi khonokho-ke kuyahlupha kakhulu so ukuthi-ke okungani kuyamangalisa ukuthi-ke khona ngale eCabo Delgado i-ISIS ifuna ukuthi yenze lokhu kuthiwa yi-caliphate ukuthi ibe yindawo yabo lapho ababambe khona marvelous ukwenza ukuthi baphile khona benze abakufunayo bazuze igas bazuze ama-diamonds bazuze i-gold lama-rupees konke lokho so kuthiwa-ke kukhanya kulobuzima so kuthiwa-ke labanye abantu abakuza balama-fake IDs so nxa umuntu ele-fake ID evele eZimbabwe engabulawa khona ngale you can't tell ukuthi umZimbabwean kumbe uMozambican kumbe umTanzanian kumbe yini so kukhanya kuyahlupha khonokho marvelous qhubeka khonapho.
Yes, Gibbs. I actually had the pleasure or opportunity to speak to one gentleman who was actually at the scene where this attack happened, and he actually spoke about that situation at the hotel where he said that there were some white nationals and some other foreigners who were beheaded, and some of them were beheaded while in their cars trying to escape. This gentleman actually was saying that he escaped to the bush and was in the bush for a week before he was airlifted to the place where he is now safe, he says. And his name is Domingos Manise. So he was explaining that there are a lot of Zimbabweans who are actually in Mozambique. He's a driver himself. He said his hometown is Maputo. So he says that he has actually lost contact with his brother and his wife who are still in Cabo Delgado. And he says he can't reach them because the phones are not working. And he doesn't know whether they are dead or alive. And he also says he knows a Zimbabwean from Budiriro in Harare, who he was speaking to on the phone constantly, but now the lines have gone dead, and he doesn't know whether that Zimbabwean is dead or alive. So it's graphic, because when he was telling the story, now that the journalist has actually confirmed, I was in disbelief. I was like, really? He said, yes, we saw people being beheaded. That's how bad it was. And he said they were pushed to go into the bush, although the insurgents are there, but, the villagers were able to shield, some of the people that escaped, and were feeding them with sweet potatoes. And he said they didn't have any hot food for a week while they were in the bush. So this is the situation that's on the ground. So he says the most frightening thing is you don't know whether your relative is alive or dead, because there is no communication between those who left Cabo and those who are still in Cabo. So regai ndingotaura neshona kuti kunavo vachangobva kupinda muchirongwa tiri kutaura isu tichitarisa zviri kuitika mumozambique pari zvino. Tanga tiri kunzwa kubva kune mumwe mutori wenhau anga ari kutaura iye naGibbs ari pano uyu achitaura iye mamiriro akaita zvinhu mumozambique imomo achitaura kuti ichokwadi zvavari kuona ndezvekuti zvechokwadi vanhu vari kugurwa musoro, vanhu vari kuwanikwa ivo pane vanopfurikidza mwero vapinda munzvimbo iyoyi vari kuti ivo vari kuda kuti vawanikwe ivo vachitora nzvimbo iyi nekuti nzvimbo iyi ine madiamonds, ine gold, ine oil, uyezve vari kutaura ivo kuti vari kuda kuti muite chitendero chechiislamu munzvimbo imomo. Saka ndakakwanisa kunge ndiri kutaurawo nechimwe chizvarwa vati vanhu ndevekumaputo but anotaura shona. Vari kutaura ivo kuti vanga vari kushanda nevamwe vaibva kuZimbabwe, mumwe murume anobva kubudiriro achitaura iye kuti mukoma Domingos, vari kutaura ivo Domingos Manise ndakataura navo nemusi weFriday vachitaura ivo kuti ichokwadi vanga vari panzvimbo iyoyi yakaitika mhirizhonga, vakati ivo vanoshanda basa rekutyaira marori, vakati vazhinji maforena arimo vamwe vacho ndevekuZimbabwe uyezve vanoita mabasa akasiyana-siyana sezvo munzvimbo iyi muine oil nezvimwewo. Vakati ivo vakatotiza vakaenda musango vakawanikwa ivo kwevhiki rimwe chete vasina kudya kana rinopisa, vachitopiwawo nevamwe vagari vemunzvimbo iyoyi zvinhu zvakadai sembambaira nezvimwewo kusvika vazotorwa nendege vachiendeswa kunzvimbo yavari yezvinezviko vari kuti ikoko zviri nani. Asi vari kuti ivo vari kuchema-chema nekuti kwakasara mukoma wavo nemudzimai wake, havasi kuziva kuti vapenyu here kana kuti kwete nekuti nhare hadzisi kushanda. Vakatotaura kuti ivo vanotoshandisawo nepfenyuro dzakadai sesu sestudio 7 kuti vanzwe kuti zvamira sei kukabhoku, nekuti vari kuti ivo hapana ukakwanisa kunge uine foni, vamwe vakarasikirwa zvakare nefoni dzavo pakutiza, saka vanhu havasi kutomboziva kuti mumwe mupenyu here kana kuti kwete. Vakataura ivo kuti zvataurwa nemutori wenhau kuti pane vamwe varungu vakawanikwa ivo vachichekwa musoro ichokwadi. Vakati varungu avanga vakatowanda vaenda kunohwanda pane imwe hotera vakachekwa misoro, vamwewo vanga vari mudzimota dzavo, mota dzavo dzikawanikwa dzichikandwa mabhambo vachiwanikwa vachikuvarawo zvakare. Saka ndo zvimwe zviri kuitika mumozambique pari zvino, uyezve ticharamba tichiedza kuti titsvage mukoma Domingos ivava tinzwe kuti zvamira sei, vazowana hama dzavo here kana kuti vapapi pari zvino. Gibbs.
Yes, marvelous. So I think we've got one of our guests here, and that is Mr. Clarice Matuku. So I'm sure that his network is not doing all that well. So we'll try to call him shortly so that we can have him on the program. But nonetheless, we also have Mr. Skumbuzo Mlalazi, who is based in London. So, Mr. Mlalazi, welcome to the program, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Amnuti Patan Siago Matuku, Osema Nikaland. Mr. Matuku, welcome to the program, sir.
Yes, Farah, Morias Babu, Kuetiri Pano Pachirongwa.
Yes, so yes. So tell us a bit about the situation in the Eastern Highlands. What's going on there?
Yes, zvino mamiri azvakaita vanhu vachiri mudhu yeindependence ine zvakawanda zvanga zvisinganyatsofamba zvakanaka zvekuti it was not like before. Tichataura nezvazvo ndingangoresponda pakutanga kunyaya yanga iri mudariro kumozambique.
Yes, certainly.
Mungada kuziva kuti isu tinogara ukama hwedu hwezimbabwe nemozambique kubhodha uku ukama huri padhuze nepadhuze zvokuti zviri kuitika kumozambique zvinonyatsotibata-bata. Vazhinji vari kurarama nekuendawo kubhodha ikoko. Mabhodha edu maviri yeMozambique neSouth Africa, asi mabhodha reMozambique rakanyorova, vanhu vanongoyambuka. Tine ukama hwekuti dzimwe mhuri dzedu kuchipinge uku dziri kuMozambique, dzimwewo dzekuMozambique dziri kuZimbabwe. Saka kutenga nekutengeserana nekufambidzana nemisha nemhuri yedu zvinhu zvimwe chete. Saka tine vakawanda vatowirwa nedambudziko iro riri kuita kuMozambique. Sekuziva kwamungada kuita tichanyasa kuzopinda mazviri zvakanyanya nezvekuti tinewo vamwe kuZimbabwe vagara vachiita zveupfumi zvavo kana kuti mararamiro avo ndeyekuenda kuMozambique ikoko, asi vasina kunyatsonyoresa kuti ndenge uchizivikanwa kuti vatori kuMozambique. Saka pari kuita dambudziko iri, vamwewo zatingati vakaita dhunja vanenge vachitiwo kana zvinhu zvanzi kuMozambique hazvina kumira zvakanaka, vanomhanya vonoitawo dzimwe tsika dzechigadanga dzinenge dzichingoenderana nekungoti zvonzi aiwa ndeve kuMozambique. Ndo ukama huri kuitika. Saka takabatira matumbu edu pamaoko kana kuti we are living in fear nezviri kuitika. Totoziva kuti dambudziko rekuZimbabwe nerekuMozambique zvakangofanana. Mukada kuona sekukura kwatinongoita ukama hweZimbabwe neMozambique, ukama une history. Saka kana Mozambique iri panguva yakaoma, Zimbabwe inenge iri panguva yakaomawo, kunyanya isusu vekuChipinge, nekuti vazhinji vedu ndo mararamiro avanenge vachiita. Saka tiri kuona kuti idambudziko ratisingakwanisi kuti ndere kuMozambique, chete ritoriwo dambudziko rekuZimbabwe.
Yes, can you say that in English as well, just briefly? Go ahead.
Yeah, the problem that is being experienced in Mozambique is not different from the fears that we have as Zimbabweans. As you might know, the relationship of Zimbabwe and Mozambique is so cordial from the times of Samora Machel and Robert Mugabe. So we have had this relationship over a period of time. The border between Mozambique and Zimbabwe is just not so much respected in terms of the way we live. People cross to Mozambique willy-nilly, and sometimes the restrictions are not as tight as we have sometimes when you want to cross to South Africa. So what is currently happening is that there are Zimbabweans who are currently in Mozambique and also on the crossfire. But to some extent, we have Zimbabweans that challenges because they can pretend to be Mozambique and sometimes to also ensure that they survive. So we now have people who are taking advantage even when they are Zimbabweans sometimes to also do some activities that makes them survive, either by stealing or by doing things that are criminal. So that is some of our fears. So we are interested as Zimbabweans to ensure that this problem in Mozambique is dealt with, because it has some root causes that are very serious. I think, as has already been explained, these economic challenges are being ignored by government, so they become issues.
Yes, thank you, marvelous.
Aha, ndoti kuna vamadhuku, saka zvamira zvakadai, pane here vari munzvimbo yekuChipinge kwamuri vane hama dziri kuCabo Delgado uko vari kutaurawo kuti vari kuziva zviri kuitika?
Tine vakawandisa, mukationa vari kutaura vane hama dzavo dzavari kutoti dziri missing, asi sekuti mazita ekutiwo amwe acho they are still to be confirmed. Hatisati takwanisa kuti tidonongodze kuti uyu, asi vakawandisa. Tingati mukavaziva kuti kana nguva ine kuti tichiri kungopedza kukura zvinhu zvekumunda, vanhu vazhinji vanenge vachitora mombe dzavo, tingati zvipfuyo zvinenge zviri kuMozambique. Saka vanhu vari vekuZimbabwe vari kuMozambique vakawanda zvakanyanya, and vamwe vacho they may not be disclosed kuti so far, because we still have to deal with also my formal statistics. Asi tine vakawanda vanhu vari kutorawo advantage kuti zvinhu hazvinamira zvakanaka, vosvika ikoko voitawo zvimwe zvinhu zvinovapawo raramo. Saka dambudziko iri sekutaura kwandiri kuita, kana rikasagadziriswa rinokura nekuti pane vari kutora advantage of the situation.
Yes, so hold on there, Mr. Matuku. Let's talk to Mr. Skhumbuzo Mlalazi. Baba Mlalazi, siyawamukela kuhlelo baba.
Asibonge baba Dolo.
Yeah, so uyazwela lapha ke kuthiwa eMozambique ngale akumanga kuhle sibili. Ungathini ngakho khonokho baba Baba Mlalazi?
Yeah, the humanitarian crisis eseMozambique. Njengomuntu wesiNdebele mina njengomuntu wakhule eMatebele nje, umuntu ngisasemncane ngakhula ngesikhathi senu. So it brings ama flashbacks. Siyayazi impi ukuthi yenzani. I would imagine ukuthi abantu, especially abantwana nabantu besifazana eMozambique baphila njani. So into esubuhlungu kakhulu ukuthi ama-minerals, the wealth of Africa, not benefiting from Africans. And the difficult sources, the baseline sources of yama-conflicts nama-aggressions esiwabonayo aselethwa e-Afrika ngoba awuthi imagine ngifaka nje umzekeliso babantu ngike ngabona wadlula la ngihamba khona lone mine leyana ese-northern province, I mean north-west province of South Africa. You will see poverty around that mine, and you hear that mine contributes maybe 10% of the wealth value of mineral extract from there. If you go to any border now, like the major borders, the major ports like Durban and White Bridge, you want a wealth of Africa being taken away from us, most only covered where they come from, about DRC, Mozambique. And then you look at the leaders, African leaders, then 54 of them. Now there's the youngest nation, South Sudan. I think it makes it 55, I so believe. Maybe say New York, when you look at them, and without Gaddafi saying, let's be one, and you look at 54 men representing us, being a wealth, which is being taken away. I think even when the situation is that they cannot control themselves. So Mozambique, Indians are Mozambique, and it's sending and it's reminding African leaders what people like Gaddafi have been saying. Let's have our own people running our own economy. I would imagine Chinese, Europeans, and Zimbabweans who are being beheaded there. They are just mere workers working for Western people, working for Chinese. But they become subordinates coming as far as Europe. So there should be a wake-up call to our leaders to say, instead of sending the army there, they should be protecting the wealth of Africa. I mean, the army will going to diffuse that situation temporarily, but as long as poverty is still going on, people they're still in a school again. If you look at Africa, if they don't invest in schools, they don't invest in education, it will lead to situations like the one that we see in Palma in Mozambique.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And stay on the line. Marvelous, quiet. We've got Mr. Charumbira, Regis Charumbira.
Tombonzwa kuna vacharumbira kuti tinoona kuti nyika pari zvino yanga yakatarisana neindependence nezuro uyezve nanhasi kuzimbabwe iholiday, asi kune yatingati yehondo iri mozambique pari zvino. Imi muri kuona seizvi?
Thank you very much, tinotenda. I think hondo yekumozambique it will be ichakondeniwa very soon. Tiri kuona president vedu vaka vachitori kumozambique, ivo vakatoenda netimu yavo yedefense naminister wedefense mama amuchinguri vakanosangana netroika ikoko. I think Sadak yese yanga iri ikoko, including the chairperson wacho Botswana president Masisi. They were there vachiona kuti what can they do kuti vakondene situation iri mozambique, nokuti situation iri kumozambique Mozambique isezvo iri neighbor yeZimbabwe, neighbor yeMalawi, neighbor yeTanzania, South Africa. Uye Mozambique kunosvikira zvinhu zvakawanda zvinenge zviuya kuZimbabwe, including fuel and other things. Saka situation iyi president vakazvipira kuti isu sepati yeZANU-PF iri kuleader Zimbabwe takaita amalgamated ourselves neZipra forces, isu tichibva from Mozambique, Zipra ichibva from Zambia, tikakwanisa kuita quench the war, which was the toughest war in the world as far as guerrilla war is concerned. Takaihwina, saka hapana chatingatadza kuita. Kana chiri muMozambique, isu takatombozodzokera futi paRenamo, tikakwanisa kuti Renamo is not there anymore. It was because of the ZDF, the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. Saka we have assurance yokuti hondo yokuMozambique haisi hondo yemasoja, ihondo yama-insurgents. Ma-insurgents vanhu vanovandira vachiti kana vamboti nzve vozodzoka vanhu vakayevegwa vongouya vachiita havoc vachiuraya vanhu. Saka ihondo yokuti ivo masoja akatrainiwa they will be able very well, especially kwedu ku Zimbabwe, African landscape yedu, the situation contained. I think so far inenge atowa contained. There is assurance from SADC.
Yes, thank you very much. But at the same time, there are reports that, the Mozambican army is very fearful of the bush, militias. They know the terrain, they know what is going on inside there, and they may be trapped if they go in. So what will then make SADC, a superior force in Mozambique?
Yes, as you know, SADC, we have got an army from South Africa, Mozambique itself, Zimbabwe, Angola, we have Namibia, Malawi, Zambia, and Tanzania also will come along. So, I mean, when you are looking at that situation, once all these countries are actually involved, there is no way we can be having an issue to stop this forthwith. What I overheard is that the SADC will have some forces that will be stationed in those areas in Palma and the Cabo Delgado. They will be stationed there, ready to fire anytime. So the insurgents, they have to know that if they are ready to come, these people are trained. These are the armies of our SADC nations. And their job as army is for sure, if there's a threat to the nation or to the nations, their job is to stop that forthwith. So we know that very well, that this is not going to be a war, but this will be just a way of clearing the disturbance that are actually there in that part of Mozambique. And yes, we have overconfidence that I'm hoping, and I foresee that these insurgents will just probably just back off, and because of the force that is going to be stationed in Mozambique, it's not going to be stationed temporarily. I'm hearing that this force will be there for quite a long time.
Thank you very much, and stay on the line. Mr. Matuku, you wanted to respond to one of the remarks made by Mrs. Mlalazi. Go ahead briefly.
Yes, I want to respond. I think let's not take lightly that conflict which is in Mozambique.
Mm-hmm.
It is an economic war. We have a situation whereby we have villagers who also have a complaint in terms of how they expect their government to have dealt with their economic situations. And when I hear the former speaker is saying, but what we need to be careful at the level of government is to only consider this as a insurgent. There appears to be also gravitas that involves the people. My experience is working in a community like in Chipinge and Chisumbu Panje, when there are resources within the community, and there are also grievances within that locality in terms of how they want to benefit. Sometimes there's a collusion between insurgents and some local people. So what needs to happen to ensure that at least the Mozambique is dealt with at the level of what our government in terms of intervention, and one side that in terms of intervention, we have to be very careful. I can give you an example in Zimbabwe in terms of when we were intervening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We need to avoid, this is just an situation whereby when we went to the Democratic Republic of Congo, it became more of a relationship between the party or the leadership and the DRC. So what needs to happen in Mozambique, it must go beyond just the leaders at the level of the army and the leadership benefiting or making some concessions at that level where they exchange some economic benefits. It must be at the level of the state. So whatever concessions are made, they must be done at bilateral agreements that are known, that are transparent, that are clearly known by everyone, that when we are intervening, what is the benefit and who is going there and who are they for what reasons? Because these conflicts, from my own study within the region, within Africa, whenever there are resources and complaining, they may be having a feeling that some of the investors who are coming in may be having some arrangements at a personal level with those who are in government at a personal level. So my advice to say that conflict at the level of the government, we need to be very careful, because we also have similar conflicts that are happening in Zimbabwe, wherever there are resources, whether it's in Chiazwa, whether it's in Chisumba. Some of these conflicts tend to become very difficult to relate to the communities that are affected, not happy.
Yes, thank you very much, and stay on the line. So maybe we've got a similar situation in Zimbabwe. This is the time for independence. People have to be happy. People have to say, okay, we've got people who went to the bush and fought against the secular government, and then there was independence in 1980. But there's some people who are complaining bitterly, like what Mr. Matuki is saying, in a local level where people are saying, we're not benefiting anything, like in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado region, according to the journalists that we interviewed, and according to other people, the resources appear to be going into certain hands instead of local people. So let's listen to what one of the guys who is in the Tumiso Tabengo Foundation says about some of these issues. Maybe Zimbabwe has to take some kind of, lessons for what is happening in Mozambique. So this guy's name is Mtulisi Hanana. He works for the Tumiso Tabengo Foundation. Let's hear what he says about the Zimbabwe's independence.
Singathi kukhona sibili esikujabulelayo ngokuthola uzibuse kankholwa ngaphandle nje kwakhona ukuthi hayi sasingakwanisi ukuthi sihambe uma pavement edrobheni kodwa khathi la ma pavement siwahamba silambile sigula siselwa lemithi sibile ezibhedlela asingasebenzi sijombile sithola imali engathengiyo kwamanye amazwe industry valiwe abantu bakithi behlukuluzwa ngamapholisa ansundu amnyama afana labo khathesi sihlukuluzwa ngohulumende omnyama njengathi sikhululekile ye ebalungwini kodwa futhi siyakhala ukuthi ilizwe kalihambi kalisebenzi ngenxa yabalungu bona laba basifake kuma sanctions. So angikholwa ukuthi kukhona sibili umuntu angakujabulela athi Zimbabwe sile 41 years angikula lutho bakithi kuchitha isikhathi kukwejisa nje hawu sizigqiliza laba babusayo kabasibone kabasenzi bantu bayatshontsha bayahuquluza benza konke obungakucabanga emigwaqo mangobo ngamagodi kuphela sikhamba seqa phezulu kwamaswiriji lokho kule migwaqo engane ngcono ngiyachiwa nguSmith yonke nje into enhle singathi siyayibona elizweni kakula ngitsho.
Tell you a big story. Look at what is going on, in industries. Industries are closed. And when you look at state security, people, are having a terrible time, according to him. He says there's police brutality and all these kind of things. But the government, over the years, has said they're not engaged in such activities. So go ahead, Marvelous.
I think that's a sentiment that we've seen coming out from a lot of people on the ground saying that, okay, yes, it's independence, but how independent are they? Saka apo tiri kunzwa kubva kune mumwe munyarikani anga ari pano vanga vari kutaura ivo vachiti ivo kunyange havo zvino pane kuzvitonga kuzere ivo semaonero avo zvinhu zvizhinji munyika hazvisi kufamba zvakanaka vari kuti ivo pari zvino hakuna mishonga muzvipatara uyezve vari kutaura ivo kuti migwagwa yakasiyiwa yakavakwa nenguva yekwasmith uko ndo ichiripo vanhu zvinhu zvakadai sesuweji nezvimwe zviri kungowanikwa zviri munzira nemunogara vanhu saka ndo zvimwe zvavari kutaura chibva itanzwa kuna vavhusango kuti munoona sei zvataurwa nemunyarikweni wedu anga ari pano ari kutaura iye kuti ehe munogona henyu kuti pane kuzvitonga kuzere asi kune munhuwo zvake zvinhu hazvina kumira zvakanaka pari zvino.
Yeah, ndinotenda. I think maZimbabweans tofanira kuita more patriotic than the way yatiri. Kana tikada kuti titaure nevakagwa hondo kana kuti vakanga vari vakazvagwa hondo ichiriko. Tinoona isi kuti even madzitateguru edu from 1890 to 1980, about 100 years. We had uprisings, Angari, the Ndebele uprising, the Shona uprising, and then up to the guerrilla war yakatanga kuma 1960 yataka so in 1980. Saka why were we fighting all along kana tichinzi atifana kungo to celebrate independence? Right now Zimbabwe is not under any colony, and that is called independence. Azvirevo kuti independence kupa vanhu chikafu in their mouth and give people free money and freebies. Anywhere in the world hakuna nyika inongopa vanhu zvinhu. People have to go and work. We know kuti new dispensation yakatora power or the reins after a lot of devastation in terms of infrastructure and etc. and the economy itself from the old dispensation. Saka right now, Ilini, for example, myself, I can testify because I was in Zimbabwe the whole of December and the whole of January. My roads are they are actually much better than the roads we have here in North America right now. The only road that is left to be concluded or to be finished is the Mashingo Bed Bridge Road, which is left with very not much of a distance.
But people here,
all
Mr.
be
Fusango,
completed.
Mr. Fusango, people here are talking about local roads. Go to
Yes.
Makwekwe, go to Mbare,
Yes,
go to
I am coming
certain
there.
areas. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
I'm
make
going. I'm going there.
let's
I'm
make
going
it
there.
very brief because
Yes.
Zupco has actually suspended certain buses
Right.
for certain routes because
Right. I am going there. I'm
just
going there.
briefly, yeah.
Now,
very brief.
the reason why I started with my highways, I don't connect my
Yes.
cities.
Yeah.
And it is because that's part of the federal government. Okay. Now, my cities are not governed by my municipalities, and all our cities in Zimbabwe, my municipalities are not running ne MDC. Opposition do not run my municipalities, and right now, about last week, President Vakatonato because the MDC is no longer able to restore infrastructure muma cities avano governor, and he has given a fund out. Now the government itself now is taken upon itself to fix my roads in my municipalities, which is very unfair for us having an opposition that just blames the government, and now the government is actually taking the job by themselves to fix from all the highways that connect all cities. Now they are now fixing the roads in every city. Very soon we will see a lot of construction, road construction in all our cities. And this is something that we should actually applaud for. So what we are actually technically saying is the opposition technically have failed. Because you look of trash and rubbish in the streets everywhere you go. Zimbabwe is very dirty, especially in the cities. Who governs the cities? Who is running the cities? It is the opposition.
Thank you very much. Let me stop you right there. There is a war veteran here who sent us a video, and his name is Pastor Makwizi. He was in the Zipra forces, and listen very carefully to what he's saying about Zimbabwe today. There he comes. Just hold on 1 second. Yes.
Pastor Willie Makwizi, isikhulumeli sezipra veterans. Namhlanje sikhangelane nendaba ekazivuse i-independence. Yebo kambe siyayithakazelela le independence ngoba sayilwela. Salwa uba abantu beZimbabwe bakhululeke benelise ukukhetha inkanuko zabo abazifisayo kuleli lizwe. Kodwa-ke isimanga esikhona ukuthi thina abalwayo empini nanxa kambe sithi sayithola inkululeko i-independence, kodwa-ke hayi sathola uzibuse kodwa kasikhululekanga. We are independent but not free. Kambe singakholishana eZimbabwe enje lapha esincindezelwe khona ngalaba ababusayo ababutha inotho beyifaka ezikhwameni zabo, abayekela imigwaqo idabuke, abasincitshayo amanzi kaZulu ukubana siwanathe, abangasinikiyo uncedo lokubana siphile kona umhlaba esawulwelayo. I-independence kambe ingabe i-independence enjani yona leyo? Ngathi anti phela i-independence kade kuzizele inkululeko, thina hayi-ke asilayo leyo nkululeko. Sibuhlungu ezinhliziyweni zethu ngoba kulabantu abantshontshayo abantshontsha imali yeZimbabwe abatshontsha imali ye-reserve bank, abatshontsha igolide leZimbabwe, belayina izikhwama zawo besidla beko bodwa. Lokho thina kuyasizwisa ubuhlungu. Hayi, singabe kambe singathi thina inkululeko? Hayi, inkululeko asiyitholanga. Kodwa uzibuze, yebo, samthola, sisadinga inkululeko. Inkululeko izakuza kusasa. Freedom will come tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, Marvela. So he's saying people, of course, they obtained independence, but there's no freedom in Zimbabwe. He says, this is not what we fought for, you know? And
Yeah.
here you are talking about a former freedom fighter, a guy who was in the Zebra forces. So he's saying, no, look, things are not right in the country. So there's need for action. So I know that Regis Musango was not hearing what he was saying, but if he was around, I was going to tell him exactly what Marcus was saying. Go ahead.
Apo tiri kunzwa kubva kune vamwe murwi wehondo yorisununguko vari kutaura ivo kuti tinonzwa kuti pane yatingati independence kana kuti kuzvitonga kuzirasi. Vari kuti ivo zvavari kuona zviri kuitika pari zvino hazvisiri izvo zvavakarwira, vachitivo vari kushushikana nezviri kutarisana nezvizvarwa zvezimbabwe vari munyika pari zvino panyaya yezvinhu zvakawanda-wanda. Saka tanga tiri kuda kuti tivhunze vavhu sango veZANU PF, asi pari zvino havapo. Tinzwe kuti vanoona sei zviri kutaurwa nevamwe vanga vari murwi wehondo yerusununguko. And I was lucky enough actually to speak to former liberation war hero Margaret Dongo for my women's show, and she was also, just saying, okay, yes, there are a lot of challenges, especially under COVID-19 at the moment. But she said the only thing is that, as war veterans, they are actually commemorating the day, but there is a lot that needs to be done to make sure that each and every person gets exactly what they fought for in the liberation war. Saka apo ndandiri kungotaura zvanga zviri kutaurwa izvo namai Margaret Dongo vanga vari kutaura kuti chinonyanyorwadza ndechekuti zuva iri rakawanikwa richisvika pasi rose neZimbabwe vakatarisana nedenda reCovid-19 vachitaura kuti zvizhinji zvinoda kuti zvigadziriswe pari zvino, anyanya kune avo vakarwa muhondo yerusununguko. Gibbs.
Yes, babulalazi sicela uphose lokugcina khonapho ke sizwe ukuthi ubona njani kukhulunywa ngabantu bakule Zimbabwe.
Hayi, iZimbabwe ivela kithi yokuphelesa indlela zonkulunkulu. Mina engikutshoyo nje ukuthi umhlobo umuntu othiwa umuntu omnyama, we need to love ourselves first of all will be said, all will be done, but for as long as we remain thinking that we are going to resolve things by fighting, we will remain at the bottom of every race on earth. So I think if you look at Chinese, with one president over nearly 2 billion people, America where you are, Brother Gibbs, how many people are ruled by one man? So I would say the more we argue, the more we fight each other as black people, the vulnerable become. So mina ngithi ngesingami ngithi kukhona khonoko okumele sikwazi singabantu abamnyama ukuthi singabambana, we are stronger. So mina ngithi our founding fathers liberation war, mina I still value impi yenkululeko ezweni leZimbabwe. Our brothers, especially in Plumtree, Espalangeni, abantu banimizi eminingi ayinabantu, they were butchered by amajiwe. So akutsho ukuthi mangaba mhlambe sesihluleka sodwa sesichana sodwa sokumele sithi amajiwa engcono. Amajiwa they will never love us. So mina ngiqhubeka ngithi congratulations Zimbabwe. Our Zimbabweans, now it's for time to resolve our problems. And our problem is facing us as Zimbabweans. It's a problem facing Africa. So one country, any problem in Africa, a problem to Africans.
Thank you. Yes.
Does not matter whether you're in Europe or you're in America, as long as you're in China, as long as you are a black man, you remain a black man and nobody recognizes you unless you love yourself.
Thank you so much. Mr. Fusangu, I think we are there. We are remaining with 1 minute. 1 minute. Go ahead, sir. Exactly 1 minute.
Yes, I think I cut off. Where do you want me to start from? Where I left?
Yeah, so the war veteran was saying everything in Zimbabwe is going the wrong direction. You have got 30 seconds now. Yes.
I didn't hear him, but let me quickly say that. I'll say it in English. I think it's easier. No. I think yes. I would like to really thank the war veteran who spoke about the efforts that he did during the Liberation War. We want to applaud for whatever he did during the war. But I think what I've realized is a lot of war veterans in Zimbabwe right now, they fought for the land themselves. They are the ones who took up arms to fight the British government, and they won the war. And most of them, a lot of them, they own farms now. So I don't know why he does not have the farm. And also, the government has been, even this year, there was a Pumbudza program. The government has been freely giving, especially war veterans, and as I know, free seeds, free fertilizer, free land. So I don't know why my brother doesn't have the land. He should go and get some land, even a piece of land, so that he can see the proceeds of what he fought for. And for himself, and right now I just heard a call that any war veteran who is looking for land, the audit is done. Any war veteran who is out there looking for land, his portion is there.
Thank you
So
very
my
much.
brother should
Yes.
go and get his portion so that he can see, he can now actually benefit from
Thank
what he
you.
fought for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the program today. We thank our guests this evening, Mr. Regis Musango of ZANU-PF, Mr. Claris Matuku of Platform for Youth Development, Mr. Skumbuzo Mlalazi, a political activist based in UK. Signing off is Gibbs Dube in Maryland, saying good night, Zimbabwe.
Ini ndini Marvelous Mhlanganyahuye ndiri muWashington ndichiti ngatitsanganei mangwana paLet's Talk ngatikurukirei.
Good night.
Good night.